On April 3rd, 2011, in Darden, Tennessee, 20-year-old nursing student Holly Bobo woke up at 4:30 a.m. to study for an exam she had later that morning. Holly's mom, Karen Bobo, woke up a bit later and got her a muffin before packing a lunch Holly could bring to school with her. Karen then left for work at the local elementary school where she taught. Around 7:30, Holly's boyfriend, Drew Scott, called her to check in. He was hunting turkeys on her grandmother's property nearby. From there, Holly got ready for school as she usually did on Wednesdays and walked out to the garage around 8 a.m. What happened next would remain a mystery for almost 6 years. Holly's 25-year-old brother Clint was startled awake by the family's dog barking. He peered through his blinds and saw a man dressed in camouflage talking to Holly. He assumed it was her boyfriend. They appeared to be having an argument and possibly breaking up. He couldn't hear what was being said, but it looked like Holly was saying no and why. He decided to mind his own business and stay out of it.
I listened just briefly and I could tell it was a male and a female voice. I never was able to really tell what they were saying.
At the same time, a neighbor heard screams and called Holly's mother at work. Clint got a call from his mother who asked him to check on Holly. He told her he saw Holly walking toward the woods behind their home with Drew. Karen tells Clint that wasn't Drew and to get a gun and shoot him. Confused, Clint asks, "You want me to shoot Drew?" But before he got an answer, Karen hung up and called 911.
911, what's your emergency?
Yes, I need to Cutter County 911.
This is him. What's wrong, dear?
Listen, 681 Swan Johnson Road. Somebody has my daughter. Somebody in full camouflage got Holly.
Clint went outside and saw blood in their driveway. A neighbor pulled up and told him they heard screaming, which prompted Clint to call 911 as well. A friend from work drove Karen home and she immediately saw the blood. She ran to the woods and started yelling for Holly, but there was no sign of her. She grabbed Clint and shook him, screaming, "Why didn't you do something?" Holly's father, Dana Bobo, was at work but rushed home once he was informed Holly was missing. Law enforcement arrived and began canvassing the area for clues immediately. Suspicion turned to Clint right away. Police asked him to remove his shirt to check for scratches or anything else that could indicate he was the one who went into the woods with Holly. There was no Amber Alert issued for Holly because of her age. At 20 years old, Holly didn't meet the criteria of being under the age of 18. The next day, 300 to 400 people searched for Holly. Scent dogs, helicopters, ATVs, and horses were used to search the woods surrounding the Bobo's home.
Police and volunteers in Tennessee are combing through fields and woods looking for a 20-year-old woman who was seen being dragged away from her home. Holly Bobo was last spotted Wednesday morning when her brother says a man wearing camouflage grabbed her and took her away.
It was initially believed that Holly may have been taken during what was meant to be a home invasion, but the suspect never made it inside. 8 miles from the Bobo home, searchers made a grim discovery. Holly's lunchbox and other personal belongings of hers were found in a creek. There were no suspects at this time, but both Clint and Drew were cleared by police. A $25,000 reward is offered for any information that led to Holly's safe return. At a press conference, John Mayer, a spokesperson for the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, said investigators did not see drag marks leading toward the woods, which led them to believe Holly complied with her attacker and walked into the woods. He said, "We believe he actually had her arm holding her. We feel she was in fear for her life, so she was complying." As the search continued on April 16, 2011, investigators described Holly's abductor as between 5'10" and 6 feet tall, weighing between 180 and 200 pounds. Bill Haslam, the governor of Tennessee, tripled the reward for information leading to Holly's safe return, making the total $75,000. At this point, police had received 250 leads, but still didn't have a person of interest. They asked the public to report any suspicious behavior, such as a person calling in sick to work over the past week, someone excessively cleaning a car or ATV, or unexpectedly selling a vehicle. Police continued interviewing neighbors, and boats searched local waterways while volunteers covered the Natchez Trace, a national hiking trail. More than 900 people were involved in the search for Holly at this point. Besides the items found in the creek, police were analyzing the blood found in the garage, along with duct tape that had blonde hair stuck to it that was found on the ground nearby. Police also seemed to backtrack on their statement about Clint and Drew being cleared, saying they hadn't ruled anyone out as a suspect yet. At this point, people were generally suspicious of Holly's brother Clint, since he basically watched her get abducted and did nothing. The search for Holly continued through April, but by the end of the month, things started to slow down. At this point, volunteers had searched nearly all of Decatur County, including lakes and waterways. In February 2012, 10 months after Holly had disappeared, the TBI offered $85,000 for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the person responsible for Holly's abduction. This is on top of the reward raised by the community, which now amounted to $250,000 for Holly's safe return. From here, not much happens until there is finally a break in the case on February 28, 2014. Almost 3 years since Holly was last seen. 15 miles from Holly's home, a residence at 235 Adams Lane in Decatur County was swarmed by the TBI. This is where 29-year-old Zach Adams lived. Neighbors told reporters Zach's truck and his mother's PT Cruiser were being searched. Decatur County authorities arrested Zach on unrelated assault charges stemming from a February 6 incident where he held a gun to his girlfriend's sister's head and threatened to gut her. On top of that, Zach had just bonded out of jail after being arrested in another county on drug charges. That day, the TBI held a press conference. And to say that Zach had had a few run-ins with the law would be an understatement. Zach Adams has an extensive criminal history.
Presented facts to a special Decatur County grand jury this afternoon at 1 p.m. After the presentment, the grand jury returned indictments against 39-year-old Jason Wayne Autry of Holiday, Tennessee. The grand jury charged him with 1 count of especially aggravated kidnapping and 1 count of first-degree felony murder.
In 2002, when he was 18 years old, he was arrested for drug possession and driving infractions. In 2004, he was arrested for aggravated domestic assault after shooting his mom in the knee with a 9mm. He pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 11 months and 29 days in jail. 6 months of that sentence was suspended and he was ordered to go to rehab. In 2005, he was arrested for threatening to shoot his grandparents with a shotgun. In 2007, he was arrested for theft of property and tested positive for marijuana and methamphetamine. On April 4, 2011, 9 days before Holly disappeared, rangers in Natchez Trace State Park arrested him on charges of fabricating and tampering with evidence, assault on an officer, drug possession, and resisting arrest. In June 2011, he was arrested for driving with a revoked suspended license in Decatur County. On December 14, 2011, Zach posted a photo of himself wearing camo in the woods with the caption, "Who am I looking for?" seemingly mocking the search for Holly. The search of the Adams property lasted several days. Shovels, metal probes, and an excavator was used to search the grounds along with cadaver dogs and underwater cameras. Danielle Darnell, who lives in the area, says she and Holly's mother saw 3 men acting strangely 1 week before Holly disappeared. She said she had known Zach her whole life and that he and 2 of his friends were following Holly at a coon hunt dinner. She said, Holly was on stage walking around the coon hunt. They basically stalked her a little bit. Holly's friend Candace Wood said she was at the coon hunt with Holly on April 9, 2011. She remembers a man with a heavy build wearing camouflage staring at them frequently. He was on the phone and would look down whenever she caught him looking. With Candace's help, police drew a sketch of the man who Candace would later realize was Shane Austin. After searching Zach's home, evidence was presented to a special grand jury. Investigators collected evidence from several locations over the weekend. After a 2-hour deliberation behind closed doors, the jury indicted the 29-year-old for especially aggravated kidnapping and felony first-degree murder. Investigators would not say what evidence was presented to the jury. nor would they comment on the status of Holly Bobo's remains. The next day, Zach Adams' indictment was made public by the TBI. Here is a clip of Mark Gwynn, the director of the TBI, announcing the charges.
After the presentment of this information, the Decatur County Grand Jury handed down indictment of especially aggravated kidnapping and first-degree felony murder on Zachary Rye Adams, date of birth June 7th, 1986. Zachary Adams is being held with no bond.
A law enforcement official at the press conference said, "We believe we can prove she was taken forcefully from her home without consent. We also feel she was killed in the preparation of the kidnapping. We also feel she was killed in the perpetration of the kidnapping. This we have a charge of felony murder." Authorities did not rule out making other arrests and did not reveal if Holly's remains were found at that time. Not shockingly, Zach pled not guilty to the kidnapping and murder of Holly, but another charge was added: witness coercion. Witness coercion is when threats, intimidation, or some other form of force are used to pressure a witness to testify falsely, withhold information, or elude the judicial process and is considered a felony. Zach threatened his brother Dylan Adams, who was serving time in prison for federal firearms charges at the time. According to the TBI, Zach tried to pass a message from his Chester County jail cell to his brother's jail cell in Obion County. Zach told a fellow inmate who he believed was being transferred to Obion to pass his message along. Instead, the inmate told investigators. The message was, "Tell my brother he is the one who started all this, and if he doesn't shut his mouth, he will be in the hole beside her." In response to the new charges, Mark Gwynn, director of the TBI, said, "We will not tolerate any kind of coercion in criminal cases, but in a case like this, which has attracted so much interest and required so many resources, rest assured we will fight hard to protect the integrity of our work as we seek justice for the family and friends of Holly Bobo."
We will not tolerate coercion of a witness in this case or any TBI investigation.
When Dylan was arrested in September 2013, he told police he witnessed Holly alive with his brother at Zach's home following her abduction. An affidavit for a search warrant states that Dylan told authorities that on April 13, 2011, he went to Zach's residence to get his truck. Dylan said he observed Holly Lynn Bobo sitting in a green chair in the living room wearing a pink t-shirt with Jason Autry standing just a few feet away. He also told police Zach was wearing camouflage shorts, a black cut-off sleeve t-shirt, and a pair of green Crocs. He said Zach told him he raped Holly and videotaped it. The alleged videotape has never been found, and Dylan eventually recants his confession, saying he was coerced by investigators, but his confession is what led to the arrests of Zach Adams and their friends Jason Autry and Shane Austin. On Sunday, September 7th, Holly's partial remains were found by ginseng hunters in a wooded area of northern Decatur County, Tennessee, just off I-40, nearly 20 miles from Darden and less than 6 miles from Zach Adams' property. The owner of the property said it wasn't uncommon for people to hunt there without permission. Larry Stone, one of the men who found the remains, said he saw a large bucket in the woods. He looked inside, and whatever he saw gave him cold chills, but never said what was in the bucket. He then turned around and spotted Holly's remains spread on the ground behind him. All that was recovered was her skull, including her jaw, teeth, several ribs, and one shoulder blade. Ultimately, 6 men were arrested in connection with Holly's disappearance. After Zach was arrested, his brother Dylan Adams and their friend Shane Austin and Jason Autry were also charged. Dylan Adams was charged by the TBI with tampering with evidence. The warrant for his arrest said, on September 17, 2014, this agent heard Dylan Adams tell another agent with the TBI that on April 13, 2011, Dylan Adams disposed of items he knew possessed evidentiary value relating to Holly Bobo. On August 29, 2014, 39-year-old Jason Autry, who was already in jail serving a 3-year sentence for aggravated assault, was indicted on aggravated kidnapping and murder charges. TBI Director Mark Gwynn said, "We have sworn statements from witnesses that saw Holly in the presence of Autry and Adams. He also said they obtained physical evidence that was being analyzed. Jason pled not guilty to those charges. In July 2017, Jason would be granted federal immunity along with Victor Dinsmore and a man named Michael Alexander in relation to the death of Holly in exchange for their testimonies against Zach at trial. Shane Austin wasn't actually arrested but was thought to be involved. He was initially offered immunity in exchange for information regarding the location of Holly's remains. Phone records indicated that Shane spoke with Zach several times the day Holly was abducted, and police believed he helped dispose of her body. The agreement was withdrawn when investigators believed he wasn't being truthful. Nothing else came from this because, on February 27, 2015, he took his own life by hanging himself in a Bartow, Florida hotel room.
Well, Shane Austin apparently committed suicide. His family notified his lawyer, and his lawyer, Luke Evans, confirmed that information with us. However, the TBI is not commenting on this developing story. Now, Shane Austin has been a highly controversial person in this case.
On May 29, 2014, brothers Mark and Jeffrey Piercy, who are 38 and 42 years old, were charged with tampering with evidence and accessory after the fact. They are arrested based on allegations made by Jeff's former roommate, Sandra King, who alleged that in May 2014, Jeff showed her part of a video showing Zach assaulting Holly, who was tied up and crying. She said she watched only a small clip and didn't see the sexual assault. Police arranged for Sandra to make a recorded call to Jeff where she told him over the phone, "That video of Holly, if it had been you, I would have watched it," to which he replied, "I know." Sandra alleged that Mark is the one who shot the video. In conclusion, some wonder whether there were more people involved in the crime, and others question whether the men who pleaded guilty to lesser charges were more heavily involved than they claim to be. Sadly, we may never know the complete story of what happened.